Welcome to the MVP Show. Today's guest is listed as one of the top 10 Dynamics influencers according to Claire.com. That's KLEAR.com. He's a Microsoft MVP who's been living and loving CRM since 2007. I'm happy to welcome Andrew Bibby. For full show notes, visit nz365guide.com/102. Now let's get on with the show. Hey Andrew, welcome to the MVP Show.
Hey Mike, thanks very much for having me.
Excellent. Okay, so you're an MVP in England, that's right. What part of England are you from?
Correct. Yeah, I live in the Midlands, actually Evesham, which is about 30 miles south of Birmingham.
Is that close to Middlesbrough?
No, it's not that far north.
Okay, so see, I got no idea. I didn't know where Middlesbrough are. I just know some people from there, and so, okay, it's just, Midlands. Okay, it makes no sense to me. Interesting. So how long have you been in Dynamics?
I've been doing it for since 2007, so about 12 and a half years.
Wow, good long time.
Yeah, I've been through a lot of changes.
Yeah. So what makes you stay in the part of the world you live in? Why haven't you come to London, the big smoke?
You know, I've done quite a lot of work in London over the years. I'm a bit of a country boy. I grew up in Devon. And so I'm not a massive fan of big cities. And they're absolutely great places to visit. But I prefer a bit more quiet, I guess. I've got kids and that sort of thing. So, a bit less action.
So you don't have heritage with the Poldarks or anything like that coming from Devon?
No. I think there's Cornwall.
It's pretty close though, right? Devon's next door, isn't it?
It is next door.
I think I got my geography right there.
No, actually, my parents used to live near London for quite a while, and then they moved when I was very small. They moved to Plymouth, which is also where Lucy Muscat is from. So, and then I moved up to kind of the middle of Devon, which is very countrified, very, lots of farming and things like that. But it's a lovely place to live.
And so tell us about your family.
I've got two kids. I'm married. I've got two kids, my wife, Leanne. I've got a daughter who's 13, going on 30. And that's Lauren, and my son, Matthew, who's 11, who's very chilled out. Very kind of laid back, almost too laid back. But it's great having kids. So good.
Is there any famous things to eat or places to go then in your part of the world?
Well, you must have a Devon cream tea, which is scone with clotted cream and jam. I always get the order wrong, but that's a kind of rivalry between Devon and Cornwall. Pasties as well. Pasties are great, but that's a Cornish thing, but they're good from Devon too.
I just find there's too much pastry in a pasty, like not enough meat, too much pastry.
That's just part of the experience.
I definitely tried them when I was down there.
Yeah, it's a nice part of the world.
Yeah. So how did you kind of, fall into Dynamics? Did you go and study at university? Did you take a career in this space, or what was the story?
No, I actually started out from university. I did a degree in computing and intelligent systems, so a bit about artificial intelligence. But this was like 20 odd years ago, so it's fairly immature. But and started out at the beginning of my career as a developer. Just really, actually, I've always been interested in computers and developer jobs were around, so I took a job as a developer for a few years, and that kind of progressed into web development and a normal sort of career progression through developer, senior developer, kind of analyst programmer, as they used to call them, and then into solution architecture. And then I finished working at a particular company in financial services, and I started a project basically doing web development that was on Dynamics, actually CRM 3.0 as it was back then. And that was extending CRM, adding custom functionality, which was basically web development. So that's how I kind of got into it. And then I worked on that project for about 18 months. I really liked Dynamics as a platform, and I could really see the benefits of it. And in lots of things that I would be doing on every single project I'd worked on previously. So things like, building forms and laying out controls and a security model, custom building all that stuff every time. And it just made so much sense to me, actually, that there was this framework here in CRM that did all this stuff and also had some extra functionality around sales and marketing and service, such as it was. And I just really like the platform. I like the experience of working with it. And then towards the end of that project, CRM 4 was coming out, and Microsoft, I knew, were investing heavily in Dynamics as a platform and really starting to ramp up that investment. And there were, people moving to the cloud and that sort of thing. So it was quite a long time ago, but it was the early days of that. And it just looked like a really interesting niche to get into. So I took a kind of conscious decision, actually, at the end of that project to stay with Dynamics and look for something else in Dynamics, and move to a partner, an implementation partner. A few partners kind of on different projects, all doing Dynamics, and went from there, really.
What's your, just mentioning partners there, what's your perception of the partner ecosystem, particularly in the UK? Who do you see that are kind of, I don't know if the word's innovating, but if you're like, who's looking after their staff really well that you see, and who's really, adding a heck of a lot of value to their customers?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I think this has changed over the last few years. I think that Power Objects arrived in the UK with quite a lot of, they were quite disruptive to that existing partner ecosystem. And obviously they had a lot of good reputation from the States, and that, I think, lots of the sort of more established, bigger players like IBM and Hitachi and Capgemini and those sorts of guys kind of took notice of that and actually thought, maybe this is something we need to spend a bit more time on and actually invest in as well. So not just expanding their footprint in the industries that they apply to, but also maybe being a bit more community focused. So I can see in the last couple of years, Hitachi has spent a lot of time being more community focused and attending events and speaking and looking after their people and sending them out to events. And that's something that Power Objects did. Before that, they sort of blazed that trail. But then Power Objects seem to be on the wane a little bit in the last year or so. And maybe places like Hitachi and other partners are picking that up.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, you get the big, it's kind of like filtering out the noise from the people that talk about themselves the most, and then those that are actually, impacting. Yeah. It's interesting. I was just yesterday with a bunch of partners, I don't know, about 30 of them. And, so many of them I'd never even heard of before. And interesting enough, in the chats I had with their different staff members and stuff, is that very insular. They don't engage in the community. They don't, and therefore they've kind of got, I call a myopic view, I suppose. That they don't actually know what's going on. So therefore, I feel that their consulting advice is limited to only their internal knowledge, where in the Dynamics landscape, that's not enough, right? It's changing so quickly,
Definitely. I mean, yeah, absolutely. The platform's changing so much and so quickly. But also, I think there's probably a lot of people from partners that are consumers of the information that's out there, but they're either they're not allowed the time, or they don't give themselves the time to contribute through various ways, events and blogging, things like that. But I've always felt that community is it's a stealth engagement. For customers, if customers have heard about a partner because they've been doing work in the community, that I think goes a long way when they're trying to select a partner. There's a pre-established trust. If you've been reading blog articles or seeing somebody speak at events, you're going to trust that person from somebody you've never heard about. So there's just huge benefits to working in the community, and that's actually one of the things that I love most about Dynamics is that it does have this amazing community of really, really nice people, really bright people, super intelligent people that are also very giving and very generous with their time.
Tell me a bit about your pivot in more recent times. Is that, as and I was quite surprised just here now to hear that you were, so much into the developer side of things. Are you more now really an architect than a developer, or?
I think, this is quite common for developers as well, is that as they progress through their career, they do less and less development, more sort of designing and solution architecture, things like that. Actually, I've gone even further than that, and I don't really write a lot of code these days. I have a good understanding of how things work behind the scenes from my background, technically. But no, I primarily work with customers now, and I work much more with business people rather than developer teams or technical people. Can still speak that language, but I do fit into this kind of translator role sometimes of talking to the business about what they need, and then either talking to an implementation partner about how that should manifest in Dynamics or other systems, and also talking to internal IT teams about the things that they need to do, the things they need to be aware of. So there is an element of solution architecture and an element of development, but that's not the roles that I do anymore. I do much more sort of customer focused, business focused stuff.
I noticed that you've got or skilled up in prosci, which is change management methodology, pretty much a standard in the industry. Tell us a bit about how that's impacted the way you work or engage on projects and with customers.
Yeah, this is a bit of I'm trying to remember the analogy, but this is a bit of me finding Jesus, if you like,
Come to Jesus moment.
Yeah. When I started getting more involved in change management, and that was actually through meeting some customer success managers from Microsoft. I've been working with a couple of those guys for a couple of years, and started to look at the work that they did in terms of helping projects and customers be more successful. And it's really so much not about the implementation anymore. That's quite a well understood process, particularly for partners. You get a partner in, they do some design, development, testing, and that's your the life cycle of your project, and then you go live. But actually, it's so much more about the work that you do before you start that implementation process, and during that process, and also after you go live, and there's the embedding period.
So what do you mean by doing the work before the project? Are you talking about work on making sure you've got the technology aligned, or are you talking much more about working with the people that the technology has been implemented for?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, but it's primarily, there's always an element of being technically ready for receiving some new technology, or maybe using technology in a different way. So having the skills to be able to do that internally, but also it's primarily about involving the people that are going to be affected by this new system, by this change that's coming in, and also getting stakeholders really on board and addressing areas where you might have weaknesses in either in leadership or in stakeholder involvement, so that there's this continual emphasis on what the project is trying to deliver, and the people that are impacted by it are aware of it, and they're also on board. They're excited for the change, and they know what's coming, and they know how to use it, and they're keen to use it. And people are always going to be at different levels on that sort of desire scale, but the more that you can do in preparation for the change that you're going to implement, the better these things land when they do actually land. Because people are more, it's not just another system that they're being given by IT and it's landed on them and they just have to get on and use it. They're actually invested in some way in the new system, and actually hopefully excited to use it because it's going to make their lives easier.
I hear from a lot of partners that they say that, change management, we'll train the trainer at the end, that there's the change management, or what else is a common one? Oh, we can't afford it. The customer won't buy change management. We can't sell it to them. What's your thoughts, opinions on those type of comments?
I think there's a real lack of understanding about what change management is. And it's been, when I've talked to people about this, it's been there's an analogy being drawn to project management maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, where people didn't really understand project management very well. But actually that's very well understood and embedded in organizations now, particularly in the UK. And change management is probably on that journey, in that there's some kind of appreciation of what you need to do, but it's actually really immature at a lot of organizations. And in 10 or 15 years' time, that will be much better understood. There'll be much more embedding of methodologies like prosci in terms of actually getting ready for a project. But to your question, I think there is a really embedded opinion that actually business readiness and change management is just a bit of training and some communications. When it's actually, I actually did a talk in Amsterdam a couple of months ago, and I started out, change management is just a bit of training in some comms, right? It's just sending some emails and training the people, and then you walk away. But everywhere I've been where they've taken that approach, they've not successfully embedded their project. It's not worked. I've gone back 6 months or a year later, and there's lots of people not using the system because they didn't really understand the benefits of it. So it's much more than just a bit of training in comms. And actually, the outcome of my session was it's a lot of training and a lot of comms and a lot of stakeholder engagement. There's so many things that you can do to improve your chances of being successful. And it is so much about communication, and you get that from the prosci methodology and the research that they do. Top tips for successful implementation, or at least the things that you could do better next time. 5 or 6 of those that prosci give you are about communications, and then being appropriate and timely and from the right people and with the right tone, and using multiple methods of communication rather than just sending an email and hoping people read it.
So important. Of course, it's a subject we could talk about for a heck of a lot longer. But just a couple of things, in looking at your profile, you're listed as one of the top 10 Dynamics influencers. Tell us a bit about, it says here, you're one of the top 10 influencers according to Claire, CKLEAR.com.
Okay.
Now, I've not even heard of this site before. So are you familiar with it?
I'm not, no.
No. So
I'm surprised for you to tell me that.
Yeah. Well, I used to know of a thing called Clout, but
yes,
then,
that's what I thought you were going to talk about. Yeah.
Well, it went away, right? It was shut down. So, so I thought that's quite interesting, and obviously a tribute to a lot of the work you've done in the community. What are the top things that you do currently? Is it user groups? What's your kind of focus from a community perspective?
Community-wise, I'm very involved with Dynamics 365 user group in the UK, so that's D365UG. As you know already, we meet through those events, but I'm involved on the committee for the overall sort of planning committee for the UK, but also in planning for the London meetings that we do every few months, and also I help to run the Birmingham user group as well, which is really coming on really well. So I help to organise that. So yeah, I'm quite focused on user group interaction, and there's actually a bit of a community around D365UG as well. So there's forums and things like that, which I'm involved with too. I would like to do more events. I enjoy speaking, so I quite often speak at those events, and that's something I've really tried hard to work on in the last few years. So doing things like D365 Saturdays is something I'm quite interested in doing, and other events, worldwide, is where I want to focus on in the next year.
And so what type of steps are you taking to do more of that type of thing?
I think partly it's knowledge about who the events that are happening, and getting in touch with the people that are running those events. So that's something that I'm doing. And you can there's always a call for speakers these days, and you can always put yourself forward for those. So I'm looking forward to doing some events it's more difficult for me to travel internationally because I generally have to pay for myself. But there's something coming up in Denmark later in the year, and there's an event in Scotland, and so these sort of European events are things that I want to start doing.
Nice. So you just mentioned they're paying for yourself. So you're an independent contractor, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so I've worked as an independent for a long time. Trying to think, I've had my company for 20 years. So I've been doing that on and off, and for the last kind of 15 years I've been independent. Yeah, which is great. I something that I've found really good about Dynamics is that there's so much work. There's so many projects going on all the time. So there's always been a shortage in people that understand Dynamics and have the experience in it for the last kind of 10 years at least. So fingers crossed that will continue in that. Not the shortage will continue. I don't want to be negative about it, but there'll be lots of interest in projects and people starting up new projects. So I've not been out of work in all that time.
Wow, 20 years.
Yeah.
What, did you start when you were 10? I mean, you look pretty young.
No, I'm 44. So
no way.
I've been around for a while. Yeah.
Mate, I wouldn't have put you past 32.
You're too kind.
No, it's true. So tell me, how long you been an MVP now?
Only about a year and a half. So my first renewal was coming up. Fingers crossed, I guess, about how that will go. But yeah.
As an independent, did it change anything for you? Did and when I talk about change, I'm talking about, did it affect you from getting work or increasing your perceived value in the market, anything like that?
Yeah, I think it has. I can't really deny that. I do cringe a bit, actually. A customer I'm working with at the moment, they have taken to introducing me as the MVP. And, and apart from anything, nobody understands what that is outside of Microsoft world. But also, that's actually not what I want to be. I don't want to be the MVP in the room. I want to be the person that's adding value for the knowledge and experience that I've got, whether I was an MVP or not. So, but I do think it has increased that maybe presence, along with the other things that I do around events and things like that, particularly in my area. Hopefully that is having an effect on, whether people have come across me before.
Yeah. Any other benefits you see becoming an MVP?
Being an MVP?
Yeah.
I love it. I was thinking about this actually in sort of preparation for this recording, but one of the big things for me is actually the meeting people that I have followed for years and years, who I have a huge amount of respect for, and realizing that they're really nice people and also are really super intelligent, highly motivated people too. And that's been amazing. So meeting them at the MVP Summit in Seattle that I've been to twice. So that's really, really cool. And also just getting to talk to people day to day. So we communicate quite a lot within our MVP community, and that's been really good. And getting to know people in the product team as well. And actually I'm working with a few people kind of day to day on some issues that customers have got, and just having access to that channel, and also for them to be so receptive. I've been really surprised at how receptive they are to issues, and for them to spend their time when they're obviously busy people looking at issues that I'm raising or other people within our community are raising, just to really help customers along. I've been really surprised and very grateful for that channel. That's
so good. That's so good to hear that feedback on it and the value that you get. So it is worthwhile. So I just want to kind of wrap up with a few quick fire questions with you. The time has gone pretty quickly, but first of all, what MVP do you respect the most in the community? And but there might be one or two, but kind of like, you talked about meeting these people coming into the community, but, let's call out some names around some people that kind of had a lot of influence on your past career.
Yeah, I think that's tricky. There are so many good people, and some of the people are, for different reasons. I respect them. So people like Scott Durow is somebody who's in the UK who's like, world famous MVP in Dynamics. Also a super nice guy, very high productivity and very intelligent. And he's been somebody that I followed for years and years before becoming an MVP. But actually, I used to work with him as well, and he's super nice to work with. Even going actually back before Dynamics, I worked with him before either of us did Dynamics for a short time. So that was kind of strange to kind of meet him again 5 years later, and we're both doing Dynamics. But yeah, he's a really, really nice guy. Generally, people like Gus, like yourself, actually, but Gus Gonzalez and some of these people that have been around the community for years, Tanguy, meeting those people like in Seattle and getting to hang out has been really, really special. There's too many almost. I meet so many nice people. Nick Dolman, trying to think now. Yeah.
Yeah, very good, very good. Tell me, if you could do it all again, would you have pivoted in your career down this Dynamics path?
Yes. I've thought about that before, but it's actually been such a beneficial career change, not career change, but a career path for me, that there's always been work. It's always been of interest, and I've got to meet some great people through the community. So yes, absolutely, I would do it again.
So what about looking forward? Like a lot of people that are just hearing about, Microsoft Power Platform and Power Apps and Flow, and they're like, we're just starting our career in the space. Do you think they've got a 15, 20-year career ahead of them if they kind of really invest and develop their skills in the space?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think that we're at a bit of a turning point with Dynamics 365 as a platform and how it morphs into Power Platform. And in some ways, I wish we were kind of, we'd leap forward 2 years and just have all of this quite difficult transition period out of the way, and we'll have that decent set of tools there. It's always going to change. So the platform in 5 years and 10 years' time will be completely different to how it is now. But I've no doubt that it will still be very innovative and interesting to work on. So for that reason, and the current market for people with those skills is so good. For that reason, yeah, I'd definitely say to invest at this time in Dynamics and Power Platform.
Andrew, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. If people want to follow you or, any content you're creating, or if you're on social media, how can they find you online?
Yeah, thanks. It's been a pleasure too. So I'm on Twitter a fair bit, at Andrew Bibby. So just one word there, and also on LinkedIn a lot as well. So I'm fairly easy to find. Again, that's sort of linkedin.com/in/Andrew Bibby. Or just search for me on there. It's not too difficult to find me, hopefully. But yeah, I'd be really happy to connect with anybody listening.
Hey, thanks for listening. Time flies so fast. We're now on episode 102. I look forward to another year creating content for the community. Let me know in the comments if there's anything you'd like me to cover or discuss in future episodes. I'd love to hear from you. Full show notes can be found by visiting nz365guide.com/102. See you next time.